Listen carefully. The truth is closer than you think. This is TeenMirror. Archive entry. Thomas, age 16. The first time people really noticed me, it wasn't because I changed who I was. It was because I changed my hair. Before that, I was easy to overlook. Not invisible, just somewhere in the background of most situations. Teachers knew my name. Friends included me in plans. Nobody had a problem with me, but nobody focused on me either. I was part of conversations without ever steering them, part of group photos without anyone suggesting I move closer to the centre. There's a strange comfort in being average. You move through school quietly. You don't attract attention. You don't become a story people tell later. Most days, I was fine with that. Still, there were moments when I wondered what it might feel like to walk into a room and sense that people had noticed something about you. Not because something was wrong, because something had shifted. I didn't realise how quickly that could happen. There were days I walked through school feeling like I left no impression at all. Conversations continued without adjusting for my presence. Teachers forgot I had raised my hand. Group chats moved on before I finished typing. I told myself it meant life was simpler, but sometimes simplicity just feels like being slightly out of focus. The haircut wasn't supposed to be important. My mum booked it after I kept complaining that my fringe was getting in the way. I expected the usual trim. Shorter, cleaner, forgettable. But the barber suggested a different style. Sharper sides, more shape on top. He turned the chair towards the mirror when he finished. I paused. The change was subtle, but the version of me in the reflection looked clearer somehow, more deliberate. On the way home, I kept noticing my reflection in shop windows and parked cars. Not out of vanity, just surprise, like I was checking that the adjustment was still real. The reaction at school the next morning was immediate. Friends looked twice before speaking. A few people smiled like they were trying to work out what had changed. New haircut? Looks good. Even teachers commented. One nodded approvingly and said I looked smart. It shouldn't have mattered, but it did. Conversations felt easier. People listened longer, invited me into discussions more quickly. At lunch, someone shifted their chair closer without thinking. A girl I barely knew asked where I'd gone to get it done. Even people who didn't say anything seemed to register it. A look that lasted slightly longer. A pause before speaking. The kind of tiny reaction you can't prove is real, but still feel in your body. The attention wasn't dramatic, but it was consistent. And once you start noticing patterns in how people respond to you, it becomes difficult to stop analysing them. I began checking mirrors between lessons, using my phone screen as a reflection, running my hand through my hair just to make sure it still sat the right way. At the end of the week, I was thinking about my appearance more than I ever had before. I started noticing reflections everywhere. Classroom windows, dark phone screens, even the shine on polished lockers. Sometimes I adjusted my posture without realising, straightening my shoulders, slowing my walk. It wasn't vanity. It was curiosity about how small changes could shift the way people responded to you. The real shift happened during a group presentation. Usually I let louder people take the lead. Stayed supportive, stayed safe. But that day, someone suggested I start. No hesitation, no discussion, just expectation. I stood up and spoke, and people listened. Not politely, properly. Afterwards, a classmate told me I seemed more confident lately. I almost corrected her. Inside, I still felt exactly the same, but the way people responded made it seem like something had changed. That thought followed me for the rest of the day. Like confidence might be something you could borrow from how others see you. Weeks passed, and the haircut became part of my identity. People mentioned it casually. Some copied the style. Others asked for advice about where to go. I leaned into the attention, posting photos I wouldn't have shared before, standing closer to the middle in group shots. It felt good. Too good. Because visibility comes with pressure. At first, the pressure felt motivating, like proof that I was moving forward somehow. But slowly it became something else. A quiet awareness that attention can disappear just as quickly as it arrives. I began studying other people's reactions the way I used to study my own reflection, searching for signs that the difference was still noticeable. If someone greeted me with less energy than usual, I noticed. If a joke landed badly, I noticed that too. Once appearance starts feeling connected to acceptance, every small social shift begins to look like evidence. I started worrying about small things. How quickly my hair was growing, whether the shape still looked sharp in bad lighting, if people would stop noticing once the novelty faded. Then there were mornings when the first thing I did was check my reflection before speaking to anyone, just to confirm that the version of me people seemed to prefer was still there. Sometimes I booked haircuts earlier than necessary, not because they were needed, because I didn't want to risk losing whatever had shifted socially. It was strange realizing how something so simple could start influencing how I move through every day. Months later, I found an old photo of myself. Longer hair, softer outline, less intention. I tried to remember how that version of me had experienced the same corridors, less visible maybe, but also less aware. Back then I never thought about how I entered rooms. I never measured conversations, or wondered whether people were reassessing me. Awareness can feel like progress, but sometimes it just means you've started observing yourself the way strangers do. Now I understand something I didn't then. Appearance doesn't just change how people see you. It changes how you behave in response, how you stand, how you speak, what you expect from the room. Sometimes I still sit in the barber's chair, watching pieces of hair fall quietly to the floor. And I wonder how much of who I am depends on what other people notice first. Some stories don't end when the moment is over. Sometimes they stay with you. If this one felt familiar, you're not the only one. There are more reflections waiting. This is TeenMirror.